What is up, guys? It's your boy, Rick the Grandmaster Cacus, and today we have a guide for how to make the Glassway strike on the Grandmaster Nightfall difficulty as easy as possible. I haven't just been playing this strike, I've been grinding it because right now it's actually double Nightfall loot, and the Silicon Neuroma Sniper, one of the new Nightfall weapons added this season, is available, and it has some pretty saucy rolls. Check out this video if you want to see the god rolls. But let's talk about some loadouts for all three of the different classes, and then a bunch of tips so that you can complete this Nightfall as easily as possible, and again, even start farming it. So first things first, in terms of loadouts, let's actually start here with the Titan. So I'm using Void, Bubble, Towering Barricade, Vortex Grenades, and then my aspects are Offensive Bulwark that increases my grenade regen with an overshield, and then Bastion gives me an overshield. Great combo there. I'm then using Echo of Expulsion to cause enemies to explode because I am missing Controlled Demolition as the aspect. Then I've got Echo of Starvation to give me Devour if I pick up an Orb of Power, more grenade regen there, and then Echo of Remnants so my grenades last longer. Now moving on to those weapons, we have the Pardon Our Dust with Blinding, Autoloading, Demolitionist, fantastic. Then we've got the Pointed Inquiry with the roll I made a video on. This was fantastic for dealing with barrier champions and any shields I came across because of adaptive. And then we've got a Galahorn. So in terms of armor, usually I use the Heart of Inmost Light, but I'm actually using the Armamentarium here because I'm really going in on grenades. And the reason is because I'm using the seasonal mod that lets me stun overload champions with my void grenades. So specifically in this Nightfall, there's the boss fight where everyone's funneling through that one hallway. One longer lasting vortex grenade will completely hold champions in their tracks and let you kill them pretty darn easily. Now to make everything work in terms of mods, I am using a harmonic siphon so I can produce orbs to activate Devour, but you could actually just easily put on the solar siphon so that your Galahorn is actually producing those orbs. Like, just a way to produce orbs is great. I've got Ashes to Assets in order to get more super energy for getting grenade kills. Obviously, I'm throwing a lot of them. Then I've got the usual stuff, you know, anti-barrier scout rifle. I've got elemental armaments, just kind of the normal void elemental well package that you see on a lot of builds. Now, the reason I did Titan first is because that is a great build, and even if you sub out a Heart of Inmost Light for the Armamentarium, it's gonna be good. But quite honestly, we did find that Hunter and Warlock had better options for farming this, so if you don't mind switching off of a Titan, like 2 Hunters and a Warlock, or 2 Warlocks and a Hunter would, I think, be better than including the Titan. But obviously, you know, you can still beat this on a Titan. It's not going to be that bad. Just wanted to mention that. So let's move on to a really essential loadout that I think every group should 100% be running at least one of these, and arguably 2, and that is a Invisibility Nightstalker Hunter. Importantly, you want to use Mobius Quiver for that damage output. Then you are going to be using Vortex Grenade again, and then we're going to be using Trapper's Ambush, and that is combined with Vanishing Step. 2 different aspects that are going to give you invisibility, and I think this is what you want over Stylish Executioner because these are just static. They don't require kills or anything. They're going to be up. Now, in terms of fragments, we have Echo of Undermining, Void Grenades weaken targets, then we're going to have Echo of Persistence so your invisibility lasts longer, and then we have Echo of Obscurity so that your finishers will grant invisibility. This is super important. You 100% want to run this because what we're doing in terms of weapons is, firstly, we have a pretty interesting one, the Osteo Striga. Quite frankly, if you're using an exotic in this slot, it should be the Arbalest, and that's going to help you deal with those barrier champions so easily, and every shield you come across, the Arbalest is S+++ tier. But if you don't have it, the Osteo is an option, and that's because that extra damage over time, that tick damage, is going to count against those overload champions if you have overload SMG. So the Osteo does a really good job at dealing with those overload champions, especially in the boss room. Now moving on from there, we just have a good empty vessel with blinding and auto loading, and then we're actually using the royal entry. If you're not using the Gjallarhorn, you should try to use a void rocket, and that's because the acute void burn is active for this Nightfall, so this is going to be doing like 25% more damage. Then moving on from there, guys, for the armor, it's gotta be the Aeon Swift exotic gauntlets, specifically with the Sect of Insight. That's going to let you finish enemies and produce heavy ammo for your allies. And of course, we're doing this season's Wombo combo. The most powerful thing you can do in endgame content this season is combine that with Lucent Finisher, which is also going to spawn heavy ammo off finishing champions, and this does stack. So you finish one champion as an invisible hunter who gets invisibility when they get a finisher, which, as you can imagine, is pretty easy to do. You spawn 2 heavy bricks for your allies. That is 5 Gjallarhorn shots with a scavenger. Absolutely nuts. In terms of the rest of the build, Seeking Wells is always a good option to let you get your elemental wells while still being in cover, which obviously matters in a Grandmaster. And then again, it's kind of the usual assortment of Void, well producing stuff, Reaping Wellmaker, all of that stuff. Now, that is again, I would say required, and running 2 of those guys is a great idea. The other thing I would say is almost required is a Stasis Warlock. That's going to be so good in that final boss room. We did actually experiment with a Renewal Grasps Stasis Hunter, and it was also pretty darn effective, so you can maybe run something like that, but we did find the Warlock a little bit more effective with the loadout of course, a Shadebinder, Cold Snap Grenade specifically, combined with Glacial Harvest to produce a ton of Stasis Shards, Bleak Watcher to turn your grenades into stasis turrets. Now for the fragments, we have Whisper of Conduction, so shards can track to you, Whisper of Torment for more grenade energy, Whisper of Chains for more survivability, and Rhyme for the same thing. Now for the weaponry, we're actually using something pretty interesting, a Deliverance with Demolitionist, obviously for more grenade energy, combined with Chill Clip. Chill Clip is going to actually cause an area of effect slow when you shoot the first part of the magazine. So if you shoot like 2 shots at a wyvern, it will freeze it solid. And that's pretty amazing and obviously pretty synergistic with your build. Of course, this is not required, but we did find it pretty effective. Then for the auto rifle, we've got a Sweet Sorrow with stats for all, 1 for all, just a good arc auto to deal with the arc shielded harpies at the end, and also to stun those overload champions. Then we've got a Gjallarhorn, and again, if you're not running Gjallarhorn, you're running like a royal entry, put on Arbalest or something if you want instead. Now, for the armor, this is built around the Osmancy gloves, which gives you a second Cold Snap Grenade. So darn good, and that means you can have 2 stasis turrets up at the same time, completely lock down an area of the map. Then, importantly, we are going to be using, I think, the best stasis mod in the game, Elemental Shards. So shards will count as stasis elemental wells. There is a bit of a cooldown, but like once every 10 seconds, essentially, you're getting a guaranteed stasis elemental well. So we're combining that with stuff like Well of Restoration for even more ability energy from that shard / well. And then we have Elemental Charge. So again, you're getting that pretty much guaranteed stasis well. Now you're getting ×2 Charge with Light every time you pick that up. And then as our payoff, we have Protective Light. I know this was nerfed quite a bit, but hey, damage resistance is damage resistance. If you don't think you need it, you could switch to something like High Energy Fire. Again, it's going to be active all the time because of Elemental Shards pretty much. Or heck, even something like Energy Converter to get more super energy would be great too. Then of course, Font of Might. So that Deliverance can do like 25% more damage, and we are absolutely rolling. Now, that's it for the loadouts. On to the specific tips for this Nightfall. When you're starting out, guys, remember you're starting out in a public event area, so there might be a nearby flag you can hit up and get a full super. So definitely look around for that. And if you're having trouble, you may even want to wait around until there is a public event and you can get that extra boost on your start. Now, after a bit, you're going to find this fallen mini-boss who has stasis attacks. You really want to stay to the back part of the room. As you can see, we're behind this furthest back rock, because if you get too close, you'll get caught in those stasis attacks, and if you're frozen solid, you're probably going to die. Do note that the barrier champions, because they're servitors, they can protect nearby enemies, so often you will have to shift your focus to kill that barrier guy first before you dump all of your Galahorns or whatever into that mini boss, because obviously he can be immune if the champion is up. Now, moving on from there, you're going to have to continue with another one of these guys in another room. Again, stick to kind of the back part of this room. Make ample use of not only your stasis freezing guys, but also blinding grenades. That's going to be really helpful in not getting sniped by stuff like these sniper shanks and so on. Now, a good tip here is if you see multiple champions, just burn one and then go for the finisher on the other one. If you're trying to finish them both and one's up, it can cause some issues, and you really don't need like 8 bricks of heavy. You're gonna leave most of them behind anyways. Now, as we continue forward, you're going to get to this kind of open area here. This is somewhere you do want to take it a bit slow. Head kind of to this left side right off the bat, and just use your primary and so on to deal with those enemy snipers. There's going to be a lot of them, and if you try to just make your way across this open area, you're going to get absolutely clapped by the sniper because it's pretty open. Then head to the far right. There's going to be 2 overload champions you'll deal with, one after, actually 3, one after another. But if you go to this far left and then far right route you see us go on, you're going to kind of deal with them one at a time, which is definitely what you want. Now, moving on from there, guys, as you're heading up this sloping hallway, make sure that everyone is there. If one guy goes and stands on the upcoming plate while the other 2 are lagging a bit behind, it will actually like close the door and they'll have to teleport to allies. Like, it can be a disaster. Make sure everyone's going up that hallway at the same time. Once you get to the top though, holding out this plate is definitely a difficult part of this Nightfall because there's really no cover here. So the number one tip I would have is just back off the plate. Like, as soon as things get hairy, heck, as soon as you see enemies spawn, you can get off the plate, deal with that wave of enemies, and then no more enemies are going to spawn until you get back on the plate. So don't think you have to stay there, plant a well, and hold out there the whole time. You can, and it's going to be a lot faster if you do it that way, but then you're going to have multiple waves of enemies spawning on top of each other, and it's going to be a lot more hectic. So get on, spawn the enemies, get off, go behind some cover, like these boxes just behind the plate, and take things slow if you're having trouble. Oh, and also, don't be afraid to Galahorn these sniper vandals that spawn. Seriously, just kill them, don't worry about the ammo. But next up, we have the infamous Glassway boss fight, and this is really what makes this strike difficult. So, upon immediately entering, you're going to have some enemies, including an overload champion. Try to get the finisher on that guy to top up on heavy. Then, I would highly recommend holding out on the left side. The right side has Vex Milk that can hurt you if you go in it, so left is significantly easier. You're going to have a bunch of enemies spawn. This includes adds, champions, and kind of 2 bosses. You have the smaller Transcendent Hydra and then the big Hydra boss. Now, this is really important, guys. The waves of reinforcements, so additional enemies that spawn, are tied to the health of both of these bosses. So, if you ignore all of the adds and then just go hard against the Transcendent Hydra, shoot a bunch of rockets at it, get it to teleport right away, another wave of adds is going to spawn. So now you're going to have to deal with, 4 overload champions instead of 2, double the amount of wyverns. So I do think it's a good idea to, if you can, freeze, stun lock that Transcendent Hydra, try to not damage it too much, and then take down a couple of the champions, a couple of the wyverns in the later rounds before you go back and deal the rest of the damage to that Hydra and get it to teleport. And the same thing is kind of for the big boss. You want to make sure that you've killed all of the adds, especially the champions, first before you start damaging the big boss, because as soon as he's damaged enough and teleports, another wave of adds is going to spawn. So you don't want to be dealing with, more champions than normal because you got a little bit overzealous DPSing these bosses. Now, as for holding out on this left side, most of the enemies are going to funnel down this main hallway. So again, put your stasis turret right here, throw your vortex grenades right here. As soon as you see a big clump of enemies, yeet those Galahorns out and deal with them. But it is possible for enemies to come in the other two sides. It's very unlikely. I've had runs where it never happens, but I've also had runs where suddenly there's an overload champion coming in the side. I found that if you're hanging out near the sides, you can aggro them to those sides, and that's what kind of brings them in there. So don't be hanging out to those sides too often. If you kind of stick to the middle of this room, most of the enemies will funnel in that middle hallway. Peel off to the side to just check it to make sure every once in a while, but don't be shooting too many adds from those sides, especially at the beginning of a wave spawn, because again, that's what aggroes them to go in the side. Now, once you deal with the adds, you have the boss, and this guy's insane. Acute Void Burn, and the fact that this guy shoots Void means that he can melt you in a nanosecond. So what you need to do is learn how to kite him around. So if someone is in that left side room and goes out the far left exit of that left side room, right, and kind of loops around, even just by doing that in and of itself, that might be enough to aggro the boss and get him to start to move over to that far left side. But you can also shoot at him a few times with your primary, and then he'll start to like move towards you, turn, and look at you. Now, the reason you'd be doing that is because what you're really doing is low-key setting up your other two teammates to go around to the right side, and while he's distracted at you, moving towards you, looking at you, your other two teammates are yeeting some Galahorns in that 1 second where his shields are parted, right? So that's really what you're going to have to do. Get someone to aggro him at one side, and then the other two teammates are going to go around and try to do some damage while he's distracted. What you really don't want to do is have all three teammates peek out the same exit, because that's just a way to get splash damaged and sent back to orbit. Now, if you are willing to take more time and kite him all the way around to that far left side, as you can see, there is a little bit of a cheeky spot where you can shoot his kind of tail here, and he can't shoot down into where you are. And so guys, that is it for the guide. Take it slow, follow these tips, and I'm sure you're going to be able to overcome this challenge. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, found it informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.